This episode is brought to you by ESPN Plus. The final chapter in the rivalry between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor will be written on July 10th at UFC 264, which is exclusively available to ESPN Plus subscribers for $69.99. Visit espnplus.com/Spotify.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, JP Finlay from 106.7 The Fan, NBC Sports Washington, and the Washington Football Talk podcast joins me to go over the 53-man roster. Time to geek out, folks, where we see the position battles that will take place in a few weeks, starting in Richmond. We go over each position and highlight a few players. You can follow JP on Twitter at JP Finlay NBCS, and you can also watch him on NBC Sports Washington. And of course, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I'm supposed to be on vacation, so I don't have anything up this week. In the coming weeks, I will have a few stories popping up that have already been written. Before I play my conversation with JP, a couple things. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler is running a series on ESPN Plus in which he talked to a number of executives and coaches to rank players at each position. Chase Young came in as the number 7 pass rusher going into the season, a spot I think is appropriate based on where I think he's going to this year. To crack the top 5 would be very difficult. He has to surpass guys like Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack, TJ Watt, Joey Bosa, Chandler Jones, and Nick Bosa's up there still as well. Can Young do that in year 2? Well, they put him ahead of one of those guys. It's asking a lot, but the fact that he's in the conversation is what matters. He's viewed as a guy who will soon be in that grouping. What I like is that Young clearly improved as a pass rusher in his rookie year. I know his hip was an issue for the first half of the season at least, and that certainly impacts your get-off. But there were other factors too that I think he improved on as the season went on. For example, they wanted him to learn how to cut the tackle in half, something he was not doing early on. There were times, and I remember talking to a coach about this, and I asked him, there are times where Chase Young's feet look like they get stopped in his pass rush. And was that a matter of keeping his legs? What was the issue there? Well, the answer was he needed to learn how to cut the tackle in half, pick a side and rush and attack that side. When you go head on too often, that's when you're easier to stop, and it's when your feet get stopped. As he improved, he did a good job of picking a half of the blocker and attacking it. From that point on, you didn't see his feet get stopped that often, if at all. And you saw him making more plays, sacks, but also big plays. The combination of health and improved knowledge will vault him rather high. He'll soon give Washington what it hasn't had often enough, a defensive player worthy of being considered the best at his position. That might not happen this year, but in the next couple of years, it probably will. As of this taping, there are 2 other defensive players included in this series. Jonathan Allen was among those receiving votes inside, so he was just outside the top 10 for interior defensive linemen. One AFC defensive coach called him a complete player. I think he was a bit underrated at times last year. I think there were some games where I thought he was really, really good. San Francisco, I thought he had a great game. The question will be whether or not they can keep him around because of the contract. The good thing for Washington is that it does have excellent depth inside. I was a little surprised that Deron Payne was not mentioned even in others receiving votes, but I think a lot of that stems from the fact that he's really not as much a finisher as a pass rusher compared to the others. That's just a guess because I think the guy's really good. Regardless, what you see is Washington has what they have inside are 3 or 4 guys capable of playing at a certain level, even if none of them might be Pro Bowlers. They have talent and they have depth, and that's a good way to build a good defense in the NFL. Finally, the only other defensive player named was corner William Jackson, who was just outside the top 10 as well, among others receiving votes. One NFC executive said of Jackson that he can press, can run with the number ones, and is a physical corner. And I agree with all those assessments. JP and I will talk about him later, but he was such a good signing for Washington, a definite upgrade over Ronald Darby. Anyway, that's it from me. After this break, I'll be back with my conversation with JP Finlay from NBC Sports Washington, 106.7 The Fan, and the Washington Football Talk podcast. We break down the 53-man roster. Get ready to geek out.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
Let's talk about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy football for big cash prizes. On Underdog Fantasy, you just draft. No need to worry about waivers, lineups, or injuries. Underdog handles it all for you. Go to underdogfantasy.com or download the app, draft a season-long best ball team, and that's it. No in-season management. They're going to give you $25 when you sign up, so you can take a free shot at a $1 million grand prize in their fantasy football tournament. That's right. You can get a free $25 in bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy if you use the code KEIM, K-E-I-M, when you make your first deposit. I love Underdog because it's just so easy to use. The mobile app is slick. The website is user-friendly. So do what I've been doing. Go to underdogfantasy.com, join a league, draft a team, and that's it. You're good for the season. Remember, go to underdogfantasy.com, the App Store, or the Google Play Store, sign up with the code KEIM, K-E-I-M, and get a free $25 in bonus cash. Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with JP Finlay. So what I wanted to do with you is just kind of go down the roster, see where you think things are at with each spot, some of the key battles that people that we all need to pay attention to and will be paying attention to, et cetera. First, though, I do want to start, before I get into that, for ESPN, Jeremy Fowler's doing he talked to executives and coaches and all that, ranking players by position. We had the highest so far, and probably will be Chase Young, and they had him as the number 7 edge rusher going into the season. Can he, and one of the things I have to answer for a training camp preview is, can he be a top 5 rusher this year? And there's a lot of guys there are a few guys you have to vault ahead that are like really, really, really good. But right. In your mind, where do you think he can be this year?
Well, in no order, who's the top 5? Both Bosa's.
Well, I think
Miles
in this
Garrett.
order, yeah, Miles would be number 1. You still have Khalil Mack, TJ Watt, Chandler Jones is still a guy who's going to be mentioned there. Von Miller is still up there. And believe it or not, like the Nick Bosa was lower because of the injury he's coming off of. So, but yet he's going, but that's another guy that you would have to nudge out, and not that he can't, but can he do it this year?
Who had the 8 million sacks for Tampa too that we're forgetting? Was that 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago, Barrett. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Chase can crack into the top 5 though. I had to do a predictions thing. So he finished last year with 7.5 sacks. Couldn't you see him doubling and getting to 15? Seems like a lot, but I could certainly see 12 or 13. I mean, he was banged up early in the year dealing with that hip, and I still think he was kind of learning, and I think his athleticism and kind of desire and work ethic are off the charts, and he's said this, once the technique kind of matches up with all of that, I think the forced fumbles and the fumble returns and just kind of the crazy plays he makes, that will remain. That's just who he is as a player. But I think the actual edge rushing technique can improve. And so I think he can get into that top 5 for sure. Yeah, it's crazy. Maybe my favorite football play ever, and you're gonna love this. This is red meat for you. It was the Orange Bowl game when I don't remember Hensel. What was that? The Miami Ohio State game. And the QB throws the pick,
Craig
and
Krenzel?
Krenzel, and Claret runs him down and forces a fumble and takes the
Right.
ball off the DB.
Right. That was Sean Taylor.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I just think Claret was like the old Scott McLuhan, like he's just a football player.
Right.
Welcome to Washington, D.C.
Sorry, dude. And I think that's Chase. Like I think the crazy instinctive plays will always be there. That's who he is. But I think he can be a better pass rusher, and I certainly think he can be top 5.
Yeah, and I think he just some guys just make plays and are around the ball to make plays, and that's him. And whether or not he gets there this year, he's going to be there for a long time. It's just a matter of there are a lot of guys, if you consider top 5, there are a lot of guys that I think are really, really good. And so I kind of like that number 7. I kind of like that slot for him because that's still a big
right now.
Yeah, going into the year, it's a big jump, but he is absolutely capable of because he's just a different dude. So anyway, let's go to quarterbacks. I think, are you assuming they're going to keep 3?
I am. And I almost assume they're going to start 3 based on what we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, I think that's just yes. I think it'd be good if they just only start 3. That'll be a success this year.
Yeah, right.
So, and do you have Fitzpatrick starting?
Yeah, I think
okay.
I think it's Fitz's job to lose with a pretty wide margin. I think he'd have to really, really underwhelm. And I don't think there's a competition at QB. Like there's competition across the board, but until Heineke starts getting reps with the ones, I don't view this as a competition. I think they like Taylor. I think they also like Kyle. But I think they're really in on Fitz, and they believe he has kind of found it late in his career.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. And I think if they if they're rotating a lot in practice, then we'll see, okay, it's more of a competition than thought. I still think it's Fitzpatrick's to lose. Running back, I think that's going to be a tough one because, obviously Gibson, McKissick. Are you assuming Peyton Barber's still back on there?
Yes, but primarily just because there's not a ton of – I know the Jared Patterson story is really fun and exciting.
Right.
But I don't know – I'm not ruling it out, but Peyton Barber's an undrafted dude out of Auburn that scored a ton of touchdowns and went pro early because he had to get money, right? Like his backstory is incredible. His family was homeless. If he stays another year at Auburn, he probably is a draft pick.
Right.
A Saturday draft pick. And it's Auburn. Jared Patterson's an undrafted kid out of Buffalo. Great story. We all know the friendship with Chase Young. That said, is he really going to push Peyton Barber? But the thing that I do find interesting is they loved Peyton Barber for that short yardage goal line role, right?
Right.
And did you notice it? I asked Ron about it.
You did. That was a good question. Yeah.
He slimmed way down.
Yeah, no, that was a good question.
I wonder if that will have an impact. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know. And I think the other one to watch is the Lamar Miller. And see, right now going into the season, I would have him probably with 3 running backs, but I do think ultimately 4 beyond there. It's just that when you look at some of these other positions, you're going to have to cut somewhere because I think they're going to keep 10 O linemen, but and 6 receivers. But if there's 3,
I don't think they can keep 4 backs.
I'm not sure that they do. And I think you could put Patterson on practice squad, and Patterson would be more of a 3rd down back anyway. And then it's a matter of, does Lamar Miller look good? If he does, then maybe you find a spot for him. But if not,
if he's all the way back, when was his last legit good season? It was like 2017 or something, right?
Yeah, it's been a few years. It's hard to get that back. So,
but dude, keeping 3 quarterbacks is going to really limit them roster-wise if they want, because you got to keep the O linemen. And now, are they going to keep the game day roster machination that you can have an extra O lineman active? Do you know? Do we know that?
I don't know. I think there's some things are still the same. I know the practice squad stuff is the same as last year. So,
The bigger.
whether or not the game day stuff is the same, I don't know. I don't even know if that's been decided yet. So it's been hard to find, some of this stuff is still a little bit confusing. What about at receiver?
You can't get official word on anything.
No, I know it's been difficult. So receiver, are you going 6, 7?
Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm kind of keeping it conventional and thinking they go 6.
Yeah, me too.
And I think 5 of the spots are pretty locked up.
Agreed.
I mean, Terry, Samuel, Brown, Humphreys, done deal to me.
Right.
And I think Cam Sims is a done deal.
I think Cam is a done deal.
So AGG, Kelvin Harmon, they just drafted the kid Dax, who I think you get to practice squad pretty easy.
Right.
Now the only thing is if they really want one of these returners, or they really like Dax as a returner, but you got to think also that 6th wideout is usually inactive on game days.
Right.
So you need somebody that somebody's got to like cover punts and stuff too, and they love Cam Sims for that.
Yep.
So that 6th wide receiver spot, I think, is a really interesting battle, and I don't have at this point. That is like a real training camp battle, I think, and I don't have a dog in that fight yet. I don't know who the hell it's going to be.
I don't either. Right now, I would put AGG on there mainly because he was their draft pick.
Yeah, they drafted,
and,
right.
Harmon, I think – but I think I would say that, and I know that there are things that they like about Harmon. They love his physical play. And Dax Milne, I know they liked him from the spring, but I agree with you. I think he's a guy that you're going to project to a slot, and I think you keep him on the practice squad, let him develop, and if you need to replace Humphreys next year, he's your guy. But AGG, because we just don't know yet. We haven't seen anything that says he should be on there, but he was their draft pick, and he was hurt a lot last year, and if he shows a few things, I think that he had one day in the spring where he really showed he had a couple nice catches. So, but I think you're right. I think that's going to be an interesting one there. And what do you want? Do you want that? They want another big guy, and both he and Harmon have the size. But, the funny thing is nobody's putting Steven Sims on there, I would guess.
It's kind of crazy. You know that he was there. I mean, I just did this thing looking at the targets from last season. And it's remarkable how bad their receivers were. Yeah. Sims was their 3rd highest targeted wideout.
Wow.
And I believe he had fewer than 40 targets. You had 2 quarterbacks that didn't like to go deep at all in Dwayne and Alex. And then you had terrible receivers on top of it. So it's just like you wonder why McKissick and Logan Thomas got the ball thrown to him 100 plus times. Like it was lack of options and lack of going downfield. I think it's remarkable for Steve Sims because, dude, his rookie year, he was good. He was dynamic.
I know. He finished well.
He kind of just lost it.
Drops.
The other thing with Harmon is if he didn't have much speed before the injury,
right?
And you just got to wonder where that speed is now. But I also think receiver position, I think injuries during camp might dictate a lot of this.
Agreed.
Because that's a spot where guys get banged up. I mean, you're talking speed guys and soft tissue injuries. Like that's one thing I'm most curious about is how much of this rebuilt receiving core gets through camp unscathed. Because, dude, I'm not expecting it to linger whatsoever. Curtis Samuel didn't take a snap in minicamp.
Right. Right. Good point. Well, I think with Harmon, they can put him on the practice squad too if they wanted to, and just
I do too.
Hold him on there. Tight end. Obviously, Logan, Bates, they're going to be on. Do you have a 3rd tight end? And if so, who would you, what are you looking at there?
I mean, they kind of have to, right? There's got to be.
Yeah, I think there's going to be 3. Yes.
You need them for special teams. You need them for goal line packages. I don't know who it is because I don't think Reyes is ready.
No.
But the problem is because they signed Reyes to a real contract, I mean, they'd have to release him to get him to practice squad, and I think somebody might poach him based on the interest level from his workout. And, I mean, not to, be a conspiracy theorist, but I wouldn't be shocked if they come up with if something happens and there's an IR or some way to kind of get some time to let him develop that doesn't require a roster spot. And then if it's not Reyes, that's a jumble to me of all the Ricky Seals-Jones and all these other dudes, to Hemingway. That's just to see who performs. Or, I mean, I still think this was how they make us do like the bold predictions. This was one from a while ago. I'm still watching what happens with Zach Ertz in Philly. I know there's talk of a trade to Buffalo or whatever. If some veteran tight end, I'm sorry about that beeping, dude. I hope it's not driving you crazy. I just got into the car and I don't know how it like works.
It lends ambiance.
Sorry, dude. Sorry to the listeners. But I think if a veteran they liked emerged in mid-August or something, I wouldn't be shocked if they add somebody there.
Yeah, and I think Hemingway, I think there's some intrigue there. Seals-Jones, he's got the veteran, he's played, but I think the one thing with Reyes will be, I think he's far enough away that I think you could probably stash him on the practice squad, pay him a decent amount of money so he knows, because like this is where he wants to be. So if you pay him a certain amount, because you can go higher on that salary, and this has happened before where guys have turned down roster spots on other teams because they know they want to be in this place because they know, okay, I might go over here, but I might get cut right away, whatever. I might only be there for 2 weeks, whatever. So I think there's a way that you could do that, but if he shows something, then they're going to have to keep him on the roster. So offensive line, are you going, I'm going 10. What are you doing?
Yeah. 4 tackles and then kind of 6 interior guys roughly.
Yeah. And for me, the harder ones was, and this is at the bottom end, of course, but Keith Ismail, Larson, who's going to be your backup center / swing guard. And I think that was one of the ones that was a little bit.
Wasn't Larson, I was surprised, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, wasn't Larson getting the second team center snaps during minicamp? Yes,
he was.
And Ismail's their draft pick.
Correct.
So that'll be that. I mean, we are appealing to the hardest core of the hardcore. I know. When we talk about the swing guard center backup.
So who do you have starting at left guard?
Flowers.
Okay.
I think Leno, Flowers, Rouillet, Sheriff, Cosme. That's my week 1 starting 5.
Yeah. I think I'm curious to see what Charles does, because but I do think, you brought Flowers here for a reason, but Charles, they've been so high on him, but can the guy stay healthy? And then what can he do if he does? So I think that's going to be a main guy. Defensive line, obviously that's a stacked area. And again, now appealing to the hardcore fan, where you're looking at who's your 3rd or 4th backup defensive end. Who are your backup defensive ends? Because that's really the question here.
Dude, I don't think they know. I think the NC State kid from last year is probably. I think all these guys have 3 names. It's hard for me to keep track. James Smith Williams is the NC State kid last year, right? I think he is your 3rd DN. I think he showed a little bit last year, been in the system. And then I think it's one of the most underrated questions on this roster is the depth at the end, especially in a 17-game schedule with 2 Ferraris on the edges, right? You got Chase and Montez, but after that, you've got 3 7th-round picks. James Smith-Williams, William Bradley King, Shaka Toney, and a guy they claimed off Philly's waivers last year in Casey Tuhill. And that to me, they chose to let Ryan Kerrigan go. That was it. They weren't outbid. They decided to let him walk.
Correct.
And I think it's a real question. Now, I know he wanted to play, maybe have a different role, but I think he would have stayed. He was pretty clear he would have stayed. So
I think he would have stayed. Well, the other, because I'm the guy, I think a big key here is how does Shaka Toney look in camp? Because he's a guy that I really like as a draft pick. Does he show enough because I think Smith Williams is on there because he can play tackle and he can play end. To me, it'll come down. You have the William Bradley King, the draft pick, but for me, it comes down to Tuhill or Toney. if Tony shows something, then he'll be on the roster. If not, you can put him on practice squad and you can keep Toohill. That's where, but I agree with you. I think it's not an underrated situation for the coaches. They're well aware of their lack of depth at that position, and which, people can say, then why didn't you sign Kerrigan? So they clearly didn't think that he could contribute in the way that you wanted to. Maybe early on he does more than these other guys, but if you're trying to build, maybe the other guys they feel can do more later, but still it's going to be an issue. Linebacker, it seems like it's the battle of the Ron Rivera special teamers for some of those spots. Jared Norris, the Kunishek, David Mayos of the world. Like, I don't know. What do you think of the depth at this spot?
Which one of them went to Cal? Kunishek?
I think it was. Let me check. I have the roster right here, and it was Kunishek, and that's a guy that Rivera has always liked.
Dude, and do you remember during minicamp he was taking mental reps on punt coverage? That's
right. That's right. I forgot him. Yeah, that's a good call.
How many are they keeping? I think Davis,
6.
Bostic, Holcomb is obvious, right? So
Kaliki
we're talking
Hudson.
about the fight for the 6th spot.
Yeah, I think that'll be cornerback.
Dude, I like William Jackson a lot. I'm a big Kendall Fuller fan. What? And you hope St. Juice can play. Those 3 are locks, right?
Right.
What the hell happens after that? You're back to the same old group, dude. Greg Stroman and Danny Johnson, those dudes are survivors.
Jimmy Moreland,
I think if there's any chance for Troy Apke to make this roster, I think it has to be as a corner. And they were playing him at corner a bunch in minicamp. I don't think the results were that great, but I don't think the results were that great at safety either, but they do like him for specials. Yeah. If another veteran pops up, I wouldn't be shocked there if you can get somebody cheap late.
And they also have, and I think the other guy who factors in there is Darryl Roberts, because he can play, he can help you in the slot too. So that's going to be, and I think if Apke looks better than he did this spring, I think they're going to I think they're going to look at it and say, hey, he's ascending or he's improving enough where he can help us if you needed him to, but he can really help on special teams. Because I don't think you really want him go. I think it'd be a disaster if he went in there at corner right now. Let's see. And in fairness to him, he's just learning the position. There's a lot of things that he has to get used to, but
I don't think he makes the roster.
I didn't have mine.
I definitely don't think he makes the roster as a safety. So this is
agree.
We're gonna try something else.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll make it. Last one, safety then, because if you have 5 corners, you can go 6 safeties based on what we've done. Because the one I was wondering about was Derek Forrest, but if you go 6, you can keep him on there.
Well, I think Landon Collins starts the year on PUP, so I think that gives him a little more. Dude, that was an Achilles tear on Halloween. Like, that's a year injury. I know he looked pretty good when we saw him this spring, but there's looking good moving around, and then there's playing football. He didn't take any snaps. I think starting him on PUP gives them roster flexibility too, because you're keeping Curl, Reeves, McCain. I think you're keeping Forrest, and I think you're keeping Everett. So that's 5.
And that, because they're going to be huge on special teams, and those, Forrest would be a big special teams guy.
So,
but you can keep Collins. If Collins is healthy, you can keep him with those groups, because if you keep only 5, it could give you if they wanted to keep somebody as an extra guy at corner, like an Apke just for special teams, you could do that. If Collins is on PUP to start the season, you could do that. And again, I know people are screaming at me at us saying that, but because like you said, I don't have him on and you didn't have him on, but that's the way you could get him on if they wanted to get him on. But because like we saw Landon doing some drills, but we didn't see, the hard part is to see the cutting and the lateral quickness and all that.
Cam McCain helped them a little at slot corner too. If
but
broke down that way.
He can help him a little because he's done that. Yeah, he has that versatility. I don't know that was his strength, but it is something he has done. And Roberts, again, I go back to Roberts. He can. That's where if they want to keep him, he's a veteran. He's done that. So they have some other options there. But, and here's the other thing, JP, like if it works well with St. Juste, now you have the ability to put Kendall Fuller back inside where he is really good.
He's elite when you can play him inside, and he's got such quick reflexes and a nose for the ball. I think part of the William Jackson signing and then using a third rounder on a corner, you almost wonder if, I don't know that that's the plan, but they might love to be able to do it, because think about the DBs they could have on the field in that scenario, especially if you get Collins back and he could kind of be that Buffalo nickel they love so much. Like, you're starting to have a lot of high-level talent on the field.
Right. Yeah, and I think it gives you some flexibility. That's what I like about St. Juste and Jackson, is it gives you the flexibility to expand what you do in coverage. You're not limited to zone. You're not limited to, one thing or another, because they can play. They have length and they can play press man. And I like that. So I think that gives them some big-time flexibility. So,
you know what I was thinking about? Sorry, I know we're going to go, but Ron had the reputation. Think about Norman and Bradbury. They just, and now since he's been here, his two biggest free agent signings have been corners in Fuller and Jackson.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. Like, his rep was he doesn't pay corners because it's the system, and now he's paid corners 2 years in a row.
Right. But they're not big time, but they're not like what Norman money was going to be, right? Totally. They weren't that high. So like last year, they didn't really get in on a Bradbury because they knew it was going to be too high. And so I think it's build that front, get the pass rush, and then have quality corners behind them. And the pass rush can make those corners look even better. And I do think that these guys have skills that really will help them. I think, especially Jackson. I really like Jackson.
Yeah, me too. I think he could be heading to a Pro Bowl, because the pass rush should generate so much for him. And I think just getting out of Cincy,
huge.
I mean, this fan base will rally behind him, and I think he could be a real ascending player in a good situation.
I don't think he would ever quite come out and say it, and he has said about change of scenery, but I think he's going to benefit in a major way from getting out of there, and getting out of there just because it mentally beats you down, but also then playing behind this front. So I think there's a couple reasons why I think he could have a really big year for them. So
agreed.
We'll see. We'll see in a few weeks. He's kind
of said it too.
Well, he has said it. I don't think he said it to the degree that I think it is the case. If that makes
I agree. Totally.
Based on what I've heard from others. So, but yeah. So, well, JP, people can geek out over this stuff because we've gone nuts and bolts at a time of the year where we're supposed to be off, but that's okay. It'll set the table for everybody else for training camp. And now they're going to say, well, gosh, now you got to wait 3 more weeks, but we'll do this again then. So JP, have a good week off. Thanks for coming on, and tell people where they can find you. They should know. I mean, but where can tell people where they can find you?
Twitter's JP Finlay NBCS, and listen to the radio show too, 10 to 2. You come on. I appreciate
1067 The Fan.
That's right. Thank you, Keim. Enjoy your trip.
Thanks, JP.
I want to see a picture of you on the teacups.
Yeah, it's a small world, baby. See ya.
See you, man.
This episode is brought to you by the NBA. Witness mind-bending competition on the biggest stage between the best players in the world, a place where legends are made. It's impossible jumps that seem to freeze in midair, and spectacular steals that you didn't see coming. It's that one play that lasts seconds that you will talk about for the rest of your life. And let's face it, it's the unpredictability of it all, never knowing when the next big moment will happen. Huge wins and crushed dreams. It's the drama of it all. You just can't make this stuff up. That's the NBA. That's game. The NBA playoffs are happening right now. Don't miss all the action.
This episode is brought to you by Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing with Philips One. This one is the ideal one for those who are still using an old-school manual toothbrush. To all those people, it's time to take your brushing one level up. The solution is a simple one. It's the perfect timing one. It's the long-lasting battery-powered or USB rechargeable one. that comes in multiple colors to match you one. The one with a subscription that delivers new brush heads for just $5. Your teeth deserve this one. Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing. Learn more at philips.com/one. That's philips.com/ONE.
What's up? It's Mike Jones from the Football Jones podcast. I know you're enjoying your time with the John KEIM Report, but once you're done, I want to invite you to come over and check out my podcast. Each week, we take a deep dive into some of the most pressing topics around the NFL. High-profile guests from the coach, player, and front office ranks, as well as the top league insiders. Check out the Football Jones podcast, another fine product brought to you by Empire Media.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to JP for coming on, and thank you, as always, for listening. A few more weeks, folks, and then we can stop speculating on what might unfold and start to actually see it. I'll be back with another episode next week, taking a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Talk to you next time.